Are you tired of scratching your head and seeing visible flakes fall before your eyes? And in actuality, you're making the situation worse because you're feeding the very thing that is causing those flakes to appear and to be visible on your scalp in the first place. That alone, for me, is a telltale sign that we should be washing our hair minimum every 7 days. So as I mentioned before, it causes your blood sugar levels to spike, which causes your insulin to spike, which will also prompt inflammatory markers such as CRP, C-reactive protein. But when you consume sugar, excessive sugar, then you are compromising your body's ability to absorb vitamin D, iron, zinc, B12, B vitamins in general. You are compromising the quality of the nutrients in the blood, and the quality of the nutrients in the blood are what feed the follicle, which help you to produce healthy hair, and sugar is having an impact on all of these things. Are you tired of scratching your head and seeing visible flakes fall before your eyes, leaving you scared to scratch your head in public or even in front of your babes? Are you wondering why you can wash your hair and the very next day or even the next few hours, you can still see the flakes as though they are chasing you? Are you worried about what this might mean for the health of your hair? Well, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what this is, why this is happening, and what you can do so that you can solve this issue once and for all, and so that you can truly have hair that feels phenomenal, that makes you feel confident, and you don't have to worry about scratching your scalp in public anymore. My name is Dami St. Clair. I'm a qualified trichologist, but I am not your average trichologist. And if you follow me, you'll know that I teach hair holistically using my SMP framework. So let's jump into the first S, which stands for scientific. But before we do, if you want help addressing hair loss, attaining hair growth, and maintaining hair health, then you'll want my complimentary guide where I tell you exactly what it is that you need to do to effectively solve your hair issues and have your hair feeling phenomenal and have you feeling confident and just being the best version of yourself. So if you would like access to that, you can click the link in the description below. Now let's jump into the first S, which is scientific. What exactly is dandruff from a scientific perspective? So in order for me to explain what dandruff is, first I need to explain cell turnover. And so every single day, the skin on your scalp, it sheds, it flakes, and this is simply called cell turnover. Now, dandruff is when cell turnover happens faster than it usually would. And in the process of this, you begin to visibly see flakes on your scalp or on your shoulder. Now, there's a few things that can trigger faster cell turnover. One of them is yeast. You also have oil and you have inflammation. And we're going to focus on yeast today because this plays a very big part concerning dandruff. Everyone has a type of yeast on their skin and their scalp called malassezia. It's sometimes referred to as a fungus or as a yeast, but it is normal. Everyone has it. However, it becomes a problem when there is an overproduction of this yeast. And like I mentioned, that's when you'll begin to visibly see the effects of this overproduction of yeast buildup on your scalp. Now, there's a few things that feed this yeast, and one of them is skin cells. So already I've spoken about cell turnover. So your skin on your scalp, it sheds daily. As this skin sheds, it actually feeds the yeast that is present on your scalp. You also have sweat, so you perspire every day. This feeds the yeast. And then you have oil. So you have the oil that your body naturally produces, which is called sebum. So this feeds that yeast. But as well as that, if you're applying oils externally, additional oils onto your scalp, then this also feeds that yeast and causes it to grow. Now, that's a big problem because a lot of the times when people see visible flakes on their scalp, they'll assume it's dryness, or they'll assume that the best course of action is to apply an oil. And in actuality, you're making the situation worse because you're feeding the very thing that is causing those flakes to appear and to be visible on your scalp in the first place. And the last thing that feeds this type of yeast is very interesting, and I did a video about it recently, but it is sugar. And I've looked at sugar and hair loss, and we'll be touching on that a little bit in this video, but sugar is also a culprit for feeding that yeast that causes dandruff on your scalp. Now, understanding this alone, understanding what feeds yeast, that alone, for me, is a telltale sign that we should be washing our hair minimum every 7 days. And I know some people are shocked when they hear I'm supposed to be washing my hair every single week. Yes, you should wash your scalp and your hair every single week. One, because your hair loves hydration, it loves to be immersed in water. But two, I've just mentioned you have cell turnover that's taking place on a daily basis. You have malassezia, a type of yeast living on your scalp, which is being fed by that same skin cells, which is being fed by sweat, which is being fed by oil. It makes sense then for you to cleanse your scalp frequently. And I say this quite a lot. What part of your body do you not wash every day? And I really hope the answer is no part, right? And so why is your scalp an exception? Fair enough, you might not be able to wash your hair and your scalp every day because of the volume of hair that you have. But minimum, minimum, every 7 days, cleanse your scalp because there is a buildup that is taking place on your scalp. And so to truly address dandruff, you need to address the triggers. You need to manage the triggers. And so already we've spoken about cell turnover and sweat, leaving us with sugar. And this is going to be our focus today. Because how exactly do you manage sugar so that you can avoid and you can eliminate dandruff? So in order to effectively address dandruff, you need to manage those triggers. And so you manage cell turnover, sweat, and oil buildup by cleansing your scalp frequently, leaving us with sugar. Now, not only does sugar feed yeast, but it also contributes to multiple issues, and one of them including hair loss. And we'll dive into that a little bit later on in the video. Not only does sugar feed yeast, but it also contributes to multiple issues such as hair loss, hair thinning, and inflammation. And we'll touch on that later on in the video. But when I'm speaking about sugar and dandruff, I'm speaking specifically about refined sugars and refined carbohydrates. Now, in My Hair Academy, we've literally just completed our 21-day no sugar hair challenge. And first of all, I'm extremely proud of the ladies in the academy because we actually did it. We did something that in the beginning, it felt like it was undoable. Is undoable the right word? It felt like it was impossible. It felt like it wasn't doable to give up sugar, refined carbohydrates for 21 whole days, but we did it. So first of all, I'm proud. Well done, ladies. But secondly, I love that people could literally see the effects of removing those things from their diet on their hair and their scalp. People spoke about experiencing reduced inflammation on their scalp. And I also asked someone, how has your dandruff been since the no sugar challenge? And they were literally in shock because they were like, oh my gosh, I haven't had any dandruff since starting the no sugar hair challenge. And so you can literally see the effect of removing sugar from your diet on the health of your hair. And now when I say sugar, as I mentioned, I'm not talking about all sugars because we have different types of sugars. We have natural sugars, naturally occurring sugars, and we have refined sugars and refined carbohydrates. And so it's refined sugar and refined carbohydrate that this type of yeast loves. And so what is the difference? When you have naturally occurring sugars, this is sugar that you will find in, let's say, for instance, fruit. You have the fruit in its entirety, in its wholesomeness. So you have the fiber from the fruit, you have the nutrients, you have the antioxidants, and then you also have that sweet taste. That's how sugar occurs naturally. But then when you have refined sugar, you remove all of that fibrous element, you remove the nutrients, you remove the antioxidants, and you're left with just that sweet taste. You're left with pure sugar, or in the case of carbohydrates, you're left with pure starch. And starch is just sugar. When you consume bread, pasta, rice, your body receives it, registers it as sugar. The difference is it's a chain of longer molecules, but it is still sugar. And this is a type of sugar that feeds yeast, that yeast loves. And whilst we're on the topic of refining, let's jump into the second S in my framework, which stands for spiritual. So I like to look at things from a higher lens, a higher perspective, because it's not only the physical things that affect the health of our hair, but it's also the things that we cannot necessarily see. So I've spoken about refined sugars and refined carbohydrates. And if you look at that word refining, it's actually traditionally used to speak about the process of refining gold. So when you have gold and it's refined, you are removing the impurities from gold. And you can do this over and over again until you're left with the purest form of gold, which has the highest value. So that's where the word refining is typically used. But in this case, it's been used for sugar, refined sugar. And it's funny to me because this is literally the opposite of the gold refining process. Because when you refine sugar, you're not taking away impurities, but you're actually taking away everything that is valuable, everything that is good from that original food source. And you're left with pure sugar, which, unlike gold, has no value. It has no benefit. It has no nutritional benefits, and it has no benefits to your health. In fact, it has so many issues. It poses so many problems, so many health factors. It's actually wild when you begin to think about it and you begin to look at it from that lens. And the reason why I like to look at it from this lens is because when you're looking at hair holistically, sometimes there are things that you have to do that might not be so easy. Okay, we have grown up and we've been taught to love sugar. When we taste it, it releases dopamine in our brains. It feels good. It feels pleasurable. And to give that up isn't always easy. But if you understand that this is not how sugar was meant to be consumed, this is not how it was originally made for us to consume, but it was actually made to be of benefit to us and also satisfy our taste buds and our flesh, then it becomes slightly easier, and I say slightly, but it becomes slightly easier to give up the refined sugars and the refined carbohydrates. When you have that understanding that actually this thing is not beneficial for me, there is a way that sugar has been designed for me to consume where it has added benefits to my health and to my flesh, to my taste buds, then when you see things from that perspective, it makes it a little bit easier, or you have a bit more understanding as to why you're doing what you're doing. So now we're going to move into the M in my framework, which today stands for mental. But before we do, if you would like access to my complimentary masterclass so that you can get my framework, where I lay the foundation, where I give you everything that the hair industry is not, about how to truly address all of your hair issues, how to truly attain healthy hair, phenomenal hair, and be the most confident, phenomenal version of yourself. If you want to understand how to take care of your hair and to be intentional with it, you can click the link in the description. You can access my complimentary masterclass where I go deep. I share with you what the hair industry is not sharing, and it will truly change things for you and be an answer to your prayers concerning your hair. So you can click the link in the description for that complimentary class. Now, moving on to the M, which stands for mental. There is quite a few things that refined sugar, has the ability to do to you mentally. And I'm going to quickly cover those before we go into what sugar is physically doing to your hair, physically doing concerning dandruff and multiple other things. So some of the ways in which refined sugar and refined carbohydrates can affect you mentally is: one, it can cause dopamine insensitivity. And dopamine is a chemical that is released when we experience pleasure. And so sugar causes a dopamine release. And because we enjoy that feeling, it also makes sugar addictive because we crave that sensation, which leads us to consume even more sugar. But the issue with this is it can lead to an insensitivity. It can lead to an insensitivity where things that should create a pleasure release, they no longer do so because we've been overdosing on this dopamine with sugar. As well as that, it can cause brain fog, it can cause anxiety, it can cause stress, it can cause a shift in your hormonal levels, such as your cortisol. And sugar has also been linked with cognitive decline, and it's been thought to contribute to Alzheimer's and dementia. Wild. Let's look at what it's doing physically to the health of our hair. Now let's move on to the P in my framework, which stands for physical. So what is sugar physically doing to the health of our hair, to dandruff and beyond? Well, the first thing it does is it creates an imbalanced scalp environment. And what this does is it makes the scalp more prone to fungal infections, to yeast overgrowth, as we've mentioned. And how does it do this? Well, when you consume sugar, it causes your blood sugar levels to spike. And when your blood sugar levels spike, that causes a spike in the hormone insulin. And insulin is produced so that it can remove the levels of sugar that is in the blood and it moves it into the body. Now, the issue is that when this happens, this also causes a spike in your sebum production. And sebum is the oil that your body naturally produces. And so when you have a spike in your sebum production and you have too much oil being secreted on the scalp, then this feeds the yeast that I've mentioned already that is present on the scalp. But as well as that, it can also create an environment where there's an overproduction of bacteria, which can lead to fungal infections, which can lead to inflammation on the scalp. So it creates an imbalanced environment on the scalp, which creates a domino effect, which leads to a whole host of different hair issues. One of them being dandruff. As well as this, if you're somebody who has seborrheic dermatitis, then it can also worsen this condition for you. So refined sugars and refined carbohydrates also affect your gut health. They affect your gut microbiome and they cause an overproduction of bad bacteria to multiply in the gut. And your gut is also linked to the health of your skin. It's linked to your skin microbiome. And so when you have issues with your gut, those issues tend to also express themselves through your skin. And so you can begin to see that your scalp is more prone to fungal infections and to bacteria. And again, it just creates an environment that is not conducive for healthy hair growth. Sugar also causes inflammation. So as I mentioned before, it causes your blood sugar levels to spike, which causes your insulin to spike, which will also prompt inflammatory markers such as CRP, C-reactive protein. And I've spoken about this in one of my previous videos, which is one of the things that you can do a blood test for to find out if you have a lot of inflammation in your body, which could be contributing to your hair loss. And so it causes inflammation. And chronic inflammation is detrimental to the health of your hair, because if your scalp is chronically inflamed, if it's consistently inflamed, if it's always in defense, because inflammation is the response that your body produces when it feels that it's under attack. And if it's constantly in this state, then this can weaken your hair follicles. And as well as that, it can also cause damage to the skin on your scalp, causing scar tissue to form over your hair follicle, which leads to permanent hair loss. There's so many things. There's so many negative impacts of sugar, and this is just to the health of your hair, not even your overall health. So sugar also causes hormonal imbalances. And so as I've mentioned before, cortisol is a hormone that is released when you are under stress. We've already established that sugar can cause inflammation within the body. The body is under stress. This can increase your cortisol levels, and cortisol pushes your hair prematurely out of the growing phase into the shedding phase, and it causes you to lose your hair at a much faster rate than you should. Fine sugars and refined carbohydrates also cause poor nutrient absorption, and so when you consume these sugars, your body is literally in competition with the sugar, trying to get these nutrients into the body, but it cannot because of the presence of sugar there. And as you know, nutrients within the blood are vital for healthy hair growth. But when you consume sugar, excessive sugar, then you are compromising your body's ability to absorb vitamin D, iron, zinc, B12, B vitamins in general. You are compromising the quality of the nutrients in the blood. And as well as that, sugar also causes poor blood circulation. And the blood and the quality of the nutrients in the blood are what feed the follicle, which help you to produce healthy hair. And sugar is having an impact on all of these things. Moving on to the second P in my framework, which stands for practical. What can we practically do concerning sugar, dandruff, and the health of our hair? Like I mentioned in my Hair Academy, we've just finished a 21-day no sugar challenge. And this is something that you can adopt as well, but not just adopt it for 21 days. You can make it a lifestyle. You can limit the amount of refined sugar and refined carbohydrates that you consume during the week, and maybe just restrict it to the weekends. Even just doing this, you will begin to see a shift in the health of your hair and the overall health of your body. This will also allow you to focus on more nutrient, wholesome, dense foods, which again are going to have a positive effect for the health of your hair and a domino effect for your life. But in order to do this, it requires a mindset shift. And so we're going to move into the last M in my framework, mindset. And so this is where you need to ask yourself, do you need to eat sugar with every meal? Do you need to have refined carbs? You might have lived your life up until that point having refined carbs as a part of every meal. I know that I come from an African household. There is rice, there is some sort of starch on the plate with every meal. But ask yourself, does it have to be that way? Do you actually need to have a big plate of rice a tiny little bit of stew and protein on top with a few salad leaves and then salad cream on the side. And then you think that you've met your 1 of 5 a day. No. Does it actually have to be that way? And it doesn't. You can actually have meals where the majority of your plate is vegetables, is rich in fiber, rich in protein. And then it's actually the starch or the refined carbs, or you don't even need to have refined carbs. You can have complex carbohydrates, but that is what is the smallest portion of food on your plate. And if you begin to eat meals like this, I am telling you, you will see such a difference. It will just blow your mind. I have been practicing this for the last year. And now for me, it feels unnatural to sit down and eat a whole bowl of refined carbohydrates. To sit down and eat a whole bowl of white rice, it feels wrong. It feels so unnatural to me. I need to ensure that my plate is heavy, heavy with vegetables, heavy with protein, and then carbohydrates is just the smallest portion of food on my plate. Another thing that I speak about when I talk about mindset shift is instead of seeing it as depriving yourself, actually see it as an opportunity to explore and to expose yourself to a world of other foods that have so much more benefit. So much more benefit to your hair and so much more benefit to your health. Don't see it as lack. Don't see it as deprivation, but actually see it as actually, hold on, I'm about to, discover foods that I've never even taken a second look at because I've been so focused on eating white rice my whole life. I've been so focused on bread and pasta. Don't even get me started with pasta. But see it as you are about to go on a journey and you're going to explore and you're going to find foods that you don't even understand how you have been living without them. You don't even understand how. So it requires a mindset shift, but it is so doable. And the last thing that I'll say is that you will begin to have such an appreciation for the flavor of foods because sugar acts as a mask oftentimes. Like you can make a meal and the meal, let's just be real, it's not good. It doesn't bang. It's not tasty. And then what you will do is you add a little bit of sugar to mask the fact that this food is bland. But when you begin to remove refined sugars from your diet, you begin to have such an appreciation for the flavors of food. And you begin to consume food in the way that it was designed for us to consume. You begin to consume food that is rich in nutrients, rich in antioxidants, rich in fiber, and rich in taste. I hope you found this video valuable. Let me know what your key takeaways are and what you're going to be doing in order to finally address dandruff. And again, if you would like to be a part of my community, a part of my hair academy, if you would like me, a qualified trichologist, but not your average trichologist, to hold your hand on a journey to phenomenal hair and just being the most confident and phenomenal version of yourself, if you want to be surrounded by a community of women who are there to support you, who are on the same journey, then you can click the link in the description and you can become a part of my Strand Salvation community. Again, subscribe, like the video. I'll be back every week sharing with you what the hair industry is not telling Black women in particular about the health of their hair. And I will see you again in the next video.